Um, Today's topic, I think, is one that's a very crucial, fundamental, essential one. Because obviously, if we talk about what's really important in Judaism, on the short list is going to be Torah and Torah study. And as we've learned in our history classes, there's been almost a national obsession with Torah study for millennia already, throughout the generations. It's been so paramount to what defines us as a nation, and it's been our pastime. Throughout different centuries, in different parts of the world, different cultures, that's the one constant. The Torah has been described as the portable homeland of the Jewish people, because the one thing that kept us united, or kept us as a nation, despite the fact that we lost our national homeland and we were dispersed, and we were, different countries and different languages and different cultures, but what kept us united as Jews was the Torah. That's what it has always been. So it's something that we do so much. It's a mitzvah that's focused on very heavily, and even today, in 2015, I made the argument once, and I still think, I haven't crunched the numbers, but I still think that it's most likely true that there are more people in the Western world studying Torah than any other form of scholarship or wisdom. Now, when I say that, I mean that when we study Torah, or the kind of Torah that I'm talking about is not where there's a finite curriculum. They say, okay, I want to do this, so then I'll get some sort of degree. I mean, study for the sake of study. When we talk about Torah study, as we'll see later on, we're not necessarily talking about things that are very practical on a day-to-day basis. You're not learning law to be a lawyer, or learning medicine to be a doctor, or engineering, or whatever form of. You're learning Torah for Torah's sake. That's number one. Number two, there are people doing this full time throughout the world, and there's more people doing that than I would surmise than studying any other form of scholarship for the sake of learning scholarship. So there's a remarkable amount of human and Jewish brain power dedicated to Torah study.
It's more than the people studying the Quran.
So I said Western world, because I don't know what's wrong with the Qurans.
There's a billion and a half Muslims in the world. And just by percentage, it's got to be.
So that's why I said Western world to prevent that. Because I think you could argue, who knows the Quran in the Near East and whatever, the Buddhists and the Hindus or whatever.
Would you say that there's a key difference in how people study Torah versus the Quran? Because we're understanding what the Quran is, it's like rote memorization versus Torah.
Yeah, I'm saying, and also the scope of the subject matter is just, there's nothing like it. There's no wisdom in the world that's as broad and as exhaustive and as intense and as deep as Torah study. There's nothing like that. And the reason why is because we have it from the Almighty. It's the Almighty's Torah. It's not some illiterate merchants writing, which is what they claim. They themselves claim that Muhammad is. Not me. That's one of the miracles, by the way, of Islam. One of the defining miracles of Islam is that how could Muhammad have written the Quran when he was illiterate?
Well, he was inspired. He had seizures. He did have seizures.
But what's clear? The best guess is that he outsourced it to some clever, cynical Jew to do it, because a lot of the Islam's teachings are like Judaism, but with a little twist.
I thought he mixed the
Christian of course he was influenced. He or whoever wrote it was influenced. Yeah. But there's an interesting cute little tidbit. The halacha is a Torah that says that if someone divorces, that's a verse in the Torah. If someone divorces their wife, they can remarry them. If they were to change their mind 5 years later. However, if they married someone else in the interim, then that's it. That's it. That's the Jewish law. Not very practical. Most people, when they're divorced, they're done with it, right? Huh? Well, okay.
My brother married a woman, divorced her, remarried her, and then divorced her.
But was anyone married in the interim?
Couldn't get an opposite feeling of divorcing.
And in Islam, it's the exact opposite. If you divorce a woman, then you cannot remarry her unless she marries someone in the interim. So that's my theory, is that some quirky, cynical Jew She said, you know what, let's throw this part of the law. It's like a wink to anyone that knows where it's from.
I saw a divorce in Turkey right in front of the mosque. The guy walks around 3 times, I divorce thee, I divorce thee, I divorce thee, and she's on her own. Now, if she never had a family, that's how savage you are. They never had a family there or relatives to take her in or something like that. She was open prey.
But no, if you divorce, you need to return the, what's called? Dowry.
I don't know what they
Either way.
Trying to say.
So the Torah has been something that's fundamental to Jewish life for a very long time. And Torah study has been the most important path of the Jewish people. In fact, the Rambam, as we all know, Maimonides is the rationalist, right? Reasonable. He's the Jewish philosopher that, is one of us. He was a physician, he was a philosopher, exposed to all of the wisdoms in the world. And he tells us in the laws of Torah study, which is the third topic that he tackled, a third or fourth topic that he tackles in his magnum opus, the Mishnah Torah. He says, listen, it's very, very important for everyone to work. If you don't work, we don't believe in Torah. Maimonides writes this. This is a point of contention. We don't believe in Torah study, and no one should subsidize your Torah study. You have to work for yourself. So what's normal? He says, well, you should work 3 hours a day and study the other 9. That's what he says. A regular guy. We're not talking about the advanced scholars or the rabbis. He's talking for everyone. You're a regular working person. You work for sure 3 hours a day, and then you study for 9. No, it's, so that's illustrative of kind of the dedication that the Jewish people had throughout the ages to Torah study. Rambam elsewhere also writes that the most important quality that you have to seek out before moving to a certain place is that there is a sufficient Jewish education infrastructure. It says like if one is not allowed to move to a location where there's no Jewish synagogue, no schools, etc. And we're told in Scripture, they study Torah day and night. Clearly, when we get started off our conversation about Torah study, we could say that the Jewish people have been doing it, and we have been encouraging people to study as much as possible day and night. And the question that we want to ask is why? What's the benefit? Why are we studying Torah? And I promised to give you 10 reasons, but when I was doing the research, I found many more. In fact, I have 15 here.
I have 630.
I have 15, and actually on the way here, on this deposit slip, I wrote another one because I was thinking I thought I had a new idea. We'll see if I remember to insert this into our conversation. So what are the reasons why we study Torah? So anyone wants to just throw out maybe the easiest reason? What's the easiest reason?
Understand God.
Oh, that's not the easiest reason. Oh, maybe I don't know.
I'm going to say the same thing as a guide.
Okay. That's good. Any other ideas? To like reinforce Jewish faith, and in contrast with other faith, huh?
So now we're at 7.
Well, thank you for that. How about debt?
Okay. Debt?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
To previous generations.
To repay a debt?
Not necessarily repay, but to carry the torch.
Carry a torch.
To keep it moving.
To uphold the tradition. I should have asked you guys beforehand.
And on the shoulders of our ancestors.
So let's start with what I think is the most simple one, and that is it's a mitzvah.
Yeah.
It's a mitzvah, study Torah. In fact, the Talmud tells us that the mitzvah of Torah study is greater, equal than to all of them. So it's obviously not just a regular mitzvah. It's one of those really special mitzvahs. Now, what's also very interesting is that the Talmud points out that there's no explicit Torah mitzvah to study Torah.
There's none in the 613.
It's in there, but it's not explicit. In fact, the verse that I quoted you, I said it's in Scripture. You should study Torah day and night. That's actually the 8th verse of the book of Joshua. So what's interesting is that right at the beginning of the books of the Scriptures, it says to study Torah explicitly, but the Torah itself does not explicitly write study Torah. And Talmud says very, very interesting. Listen to this, guys. This will blow your mind. Or maybe it won't. And the Talmud says the reason why the Torah does not explicitly say to study Torah is that it's that it's somewhat crass and crude for someone, let's say a spouse, to demand intercourse. So too, it's crude of the Torah to demand that we study it. That's what it says. And that kind of, I think, opens up a window of an insight that what's the comparison that the Torah, that the Talmud here is making is that the relationship that Jews have with Torah is akin to intimacy between a husband and wife, which is remarkable. It's a remarkable idea.
I thought the wife can demand intercourse from the husband.
Well, she can. Like we mentioned that last time, but it's encouraged for her to demand it not in a crude manner, but in a tacit manner, in a covert manner. That's what it says. And in fact, my grandfather once wrote in one of his books that the description that we have of the first spouse, of the first wife. No. Don't even try. We have too much on the schedule today. So the first description we have of Eve, or of the imperative for creation of Eve, Lo tov yos adam levado. It's not good for a man to be alone. I shall make for him a helpmate. Right? Azer, an assistance, help. Man can't do it alone. So we compare Torah.
And that's been true for all of these generations.
Yes, that's right. But we compare Torah to a wife that someone would consort with. Thus, my grandfather once wrote that the Torah is going to be a helpmate. It's going to be an assistance for us to achieve what we need to achieve. So man, thus, is dropped into the world, parachuted in with responsibilities and with tasks. And things are demanded of them. The Torah
attempt to help him.
Right, just like the wife created a unit that they work together to achieve those goals. Man cannot do it alone. Man cannot do it alone without Torah. But that's an interesting thing, and there are other examples, by the way, of this comparison of Torah to a wife. And both of the ones that I can think of, we're not going to discuss right now. So let's move to the next one. So that's number one. Number one, it's a mitzvah, and number two. What's number two? So I found number two here. I think it was also very simple. It's no halach. Someone mentioned this. We talk about the Torah. The word Torah means instructions, and we look at the Torah as being instruction manual for life. When you buy a new toaster, it says read the instructions before using, because otherwise death or loss of limb could result. And the more sophisticated the machinery, like you bought a new car, it comes with a very thick manual. You buy a new Bluetooth speaker, it comes with a very thin manual. If you buy a 747 jumbo jet, it comes with an enormous manual. Right? The more complicated and sophisticated the machinery that you're going to be buying and you're going to start using, the more you need to know about how to operate it, how to maximize it, how to not mess it up. It was a great Larry Ellison is one of the wealthiest people in the world. Nice Jewish guy. He's the wealthiest Jew out there. The CEO of Oracle. So he once put in his plane diesel fuel. Oh no, I'm sorry. I think he put regular fuel in his plane, in his Gulfstream G45, which is a $50 million plane, which is nothing for him. But and had he flown his plane, he would have. I don't know if he blown up, but he destroyed the engine. They had to just check out. Check out $100,000 worth of fuel. That's an example. If you don't read the instruction manual, you're going to mess up. Clearly with planes and clearly with a lot of things. If you don't know how to use things, you don't know how to maximize things. You won't know all the features. So life itself, the Almighty, Creator of heaven and earth and everything, such sophistication, right? Such minutia, and thus we look at the Torah as being the instruction manual that comes with the world. If you want to operate your toaster, your jet, your car, your washing machine, whatever, you should read the instructions. If you want to maximize life, you have instructions. That's what we consider. The mitzvahs are instructions for living. And how do you know what to do? How do you know how to fulfill the mitzvahs? How do you even know what the mitzvahs are? There's 613 out of them. How many of them can we name right here, right now? How many if we were to, I'm not potentially do that, but all 11 of us, or whatever it is, if we were to just go naming one of, do you think we could get past 200? I doubt it. Because there's a lot of mitzvahs, and we have to read the Torah, and we don't remember all that. Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
But a few hundred are all.
Okay, let's start with number one. Don't break the bones of the Korban Pesach. Okay, number one. Okay, number two. Oh, thank you. That's number one. Yes, a lot of them are. That's a good point. A lot of them are ones that are not relevant to us. And we'll get to this in a second. The next one will address that idea of studying mitzvahs that are not relevant to us. But we do have many mitzvahs that are relevant to us. We saw the tefillin video last week, and this, people said that it's been wearing tefillin, and they don't know, I didn't know this particular aspect of the mitzvah, or this halacha, or this, even I watched it. I never learned the laws of tefillin intently. I watched it. I learned stuff as well, how they make the tefillin. Very cool. Yeah, I didn't know that. All the details about what they use, what they don't use. And, that was very informative, and that helps us know how to live life, the instructions for living.
Are they numbered? The 613 commandments, are they numbered? Like tefillin is number X?
Let us hold off to the number 4. So we have 3 and 4. I'm saying we have 3 and 4 here.
Okay.
But I want to point out, in my years in yeshivas, I spent 9 years in yeshiva, so post high school yeshiva Torah study. I would guess that probably less than 5% of the subject material that I was studying was relevant to me in a day-to-day life. The vast majority of times you're dealing with laws of partners, laws of documents, laws of jurisprudence, laws of finding a lost object, laws of the 4 custodians. My cow killed my bull wars Bernie's bull and in my house and his house, and right, these details. You're like, well, wait a minute. If Torah study was all about knowing how to live your life today, 2015, how to maximize life in a practical way for us, we wouldn't be spending as much time studying everything else. So why do we study everything else? So in fact, the Talmud helps us a lot by telling us that there are 3 mitzvahs that are not relevant or practical ever. It means there are 3 scenarios where the Torah tells us what to do, what the law is in these three scenarios, and in fact they never happened, never will happen. What are these 3 mitzvahs? Wayward and rebellious son of Deuteronomy. Yeah, the son who eats a certain amount of meat and drinks a certain amount of wine and steals and lies and this and that. And they leave him lashes, and then and he's between 13 and 3 months. And his parents decide to do it. They're both the same height and same weight and same size and same voice, and all the details, lots of details in the 8th chapter of Sanhedrin, Ben Sorah Moreh. And the Talmud declares in that same chapter, Ben Sorah Moreh, wayward and rebellious son, lo haya, never was, v'lo yihiyeh. V'lo asid li, will never in the future be. So why was it written? Why would you write? Why would you tell these instructions for living? It's not a situation that we will ever encounter. That's one example. Other example is when someone has leprosy in their house, so splotches appear in your wall, you got to dismantle the house. And the third one is a city that is in its entirety, a Jewish city in its entirety, has adopted idolatry, and the entire city is burned. But that is also will never happen, the Talmud points out, because if there's even one mezuzah or one tefillin or one religious article of any sort, one Jewish book, it will not fall under the category. So it never happened.
But what about, let's go back to the first one.
Wayward rebellious son. Yeah.
What do you mean we never have a wayward?
It'll never happen. It'll never happen because there are so many details that have to be.
The punishment would never happen.
Yes, means
the punishment. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it means the detail. This Torah-specific case of a wayward rebellious son, where the child steals money from his parents between the age of 13 and 13 and a quarter. I'm sorry, 13 and a quarter, 13 and 3 months. He buys meat, eats undercooked meat and wine, an enormous amount in one gulp in bad society, and both of his parents happen to be the same height, happen to look the same, happen to have the same voice, happen to none of them have any sort of malady of any sort, and they on their own accord decide to bring him into court. No one else to bring him to court. They have to testify, etc. And then they have to get lashes. Child has to do it again, all within 3 months. And then the parents have to decide voluntarily to execute their own kid. That will never happen.
Nice.
So many details. So Thomas said, this will never happen. So why is it written? Lama nichtav. Why is it written? Drosh v'kabel schar. Study and gain reward. So now item number 3 is study and gain reward. Now what kind of reward are we talking about? Doesn't say. It could be that it's reward in the next world, some sort of spiritual reward. Or it could be, I think I might have mentioned this to this group before. In fact, I remember that I did. It could be reward in this world. It means that there's lessons that are inherent in these episodes where we could learn something. It's not just about the particular example, and flesh out that example to its conclusion. Rather, it is teaching us an idea. So, like the idea of parenting, etc. So that would be number 1. Number 3, to receive reward. And in fact, the Talmud tells us that if someone studies the laws of an olah, they receive reward as if they fulfilled an olah. What's an olah? An olah is a sacrifice. So you ask the question: we study laws of sacrifice, or some laws of all these laws that are never pertinent to us practically, but we study them, we get the reward. And if someone studies the laws of an olah offering, then they receive as the reward as if they brought an olah offering. So what this reward is, like we said, that part, I think there's room for ambiguity. It doesn't mean that it's spiritual reward. Like any mitzvah you do, you gain a certain spiritual achievement, or is it
understanding of why they did what they did when they did it? Way back.
Well, maybe that, but it's a mitzvah, and mitzvahs grant you reward even if it's not practical to you. So we already have 3. Let's go to number 4. There's where it gets interesting. So you asked the question, is there any book that discusses the 613 mitzvahs in order? So there's a book of apocryphal authorship from the 13th century, the book called Sefer HaChinuch. The word chinuch, and what the word chinuch means? Education. The book of education. And it's a book that delineates mitzvah number 1 in Genesis, be fruitful and multiply, and counts the mitzvahs in order from the first mitzvah in Genesis to the last mitzvah in Deuteronomy. First mitzvah being be fruitful and multiply, last mitzvah being write a Sefer Torah. Write a Torah scroll. There's a mitzvah on everyone to write a Torah scroll. Mitzvah number 2, have a bris milah. Mitzvah number 3, don't eat the sciatica, etc., etc. It goes from 1, and it gives like a brief outline of the mitzvah. You know what it is, who it applies to, when does it apply, and a little bit of the reasonings behind it. Ta'amei ha-mitzvah. So that's to answer your question. But in his introduction to this amazing world-class book of scholarship, he asked the same question that we're asking. Why would the Almighty give us such an intense, such a deep, such a spiritual, such a robust Torah to us lowly humans? Why does the Almighty give us Torah? Why are we studying Torah so much? And he says an insight that's just a fundamental idea in all of Jewish life and philosophy. He's like this. He says the Almighty created 3 kinds of creatures. We know that science has various estimations as to how many different species there are in the world. The smallest number that I've seen is 1.25 million. The largest number that I've seen is 8.7 million. These are clearly estimations because no one has any idea. And according to science, we're 25 different species are going extinct every single solitary day. And just to throw another wrench here, and according to science, according to the experts in extinction, 99.9% or something like that of all species that have ever existed are already extinct. So if you were to flesh that out, we're talking about over the history of the universe, we're talking about hundreds of millions of different independently existing species. And if you just want to take it to the next conclusion, and you say, wait a minute, is it possible mathematically for us to have so many different species on such a relatively short amount of time, talking about 3 billion years, which is nothing, to create hundreds and hundreds of millions of different species? coexisting. In fact, and they're disappearing at 25 a day, and when they're not appearing at 25 a day, they're not evolving at 25 a day. So you do the math, you have a real big problem. As if you want to take the road of not believing in God and believing in all being random, mathematically it's impossible. It's impossible because the engine that drives it all, evolution, is clearly not working to the degree that would be needed to create hundreds of millions of different species when we haven't seen in all of human history even one new species being created or being evolved, and we see the rate of depletion being much faster than the rate of production of species. Anyhow, as an aside. Either way, so there's millions of species, and they all share one commonality, and that is that they're instinctual. They are pre-programmed to respond to situations. As an example, you'll never be able to convince any animal in the world to go on a hunger strike. It's not possible. It's not possible for an animal to take an ideological stand and say, I'm not eating. We have Nathan Sharansky, the great refusnik hero, who I read his book. What's the book called? I forgot what his book was called. About his time period in Soviet Russia. And he went on a hunger strike of, and wants to guess it, 110, 120 days. Insane dedication to an idea. They used to put a pipe down his throat and just shovel in like this mixture of whatever. Because that is something that's uniquely human. We'll see why. An animal cannot possibly do that. It's not possible. All millions of animals. That's creature number one. Creature number two, 100% instinct. Creature number two is the angels. Angels are 100% intelligence. An angel, it's not possible for them to be dominated by anything other than pure intelligence. They cannot be swayed by instinct. If it's not rational, if it doesn't make sense, if it's not what they're instructed to do intelligently, then, or spiritually, however you want to say the same thing, then they're not going to act. And then you have one other class of creatures, and that's humans, where we're half angel, half animal. We have our instinct. If I snap at your face, you blink, right? Even though you knew it's not, intellectually, I'm not going to poke at your eyes, right? If I said, hey, listen, Dan, I'm going to do a movement with my head, and I'm not going to poke your eyes, you'll still blink. Why? You're not blinking intellectually, you're blinking because you have pre-programmed DNA that responds to instincts. You're instinctual. Yet you have the ability to override that with your intelligence, for good or for bad. But you have an ability. As a human, you're granted the unique capacity to have this struggle, this conflict of mind and body, of what we call soul and animalistic instinct. And in the big picture, we talk about man's responsibilities in life is to negotiate or navigate this divide, this conflict, and make sure that the soul or the intelligence overrides the body and the instinct, and not vice versa. That's what the Chinuch writes in his introduction. And he says, how are we going to do that? I've said this 1,000 times, I'll say it again. If man does nothing, if man does not take action, invariably one of those two sides will win, and that's the instinct. Because instinct is a little bit more powerful than intelligence, or a little bit more entrenched than intelligence. So if you don't do anything about this, you don't empower your intelligence, you don't sharpen your mind, you don't hone, you don't awaken your soul, what's going to happen? Who's going to dominate in this struggle? Your body, no question. Says the Chinuch, the reason why we have a Torah is because a Torah sharpens the mind. The Torah appeals to the intelligence. When someone studies Torah, what do? They're engaging their mind with pure intelligence, 100% unadulterated intelligence. Why? Because you're digging into God's brain. That's what you're doing, essentially. God's will, it's from the Almighty. That's pure intelligence, pure spirituality. Thus, if you want to possibly be successful in your life's mission, if you want to possibly have a situation where your intelligence is going to override your instinct, you have to make sure that your intelligence is sharp, is honed, is ready for battle. How do you do that? You do that by studying Torah, the greatest brain pencil sharpener out there. I look at the Torah, I see you study Torah, just imagine like a lumbering guy just spinning like this, and his brain is in this pencil sharpener. sharper and sharper and sharper. Now, I once advocated, the yeshiva schedule follows a universal schedule, I guess, and that is they have off 3 times a year, 1 month for the month of Nisan for Passover, 3 weeks for the summer, and 3 weeks for from after Yom Kippur through Sukkot. So we're talking about 4 weeks plus 3 weeks plus 3 weeks. So 10 weeks out of the year, that's the vacation schedule.
Now, it's not pure, and you don't peak your intelligence if you study other than Torah.
I would agree that you play chess or you study sciences, you do brain twisters, yes, but nothing compares to that in Torah. This is my idea. This is my idea to literally save humanity. I want to take, during these 10 weeks, some of the yeshiva guys. I studied in yeshiva. Like, I encountered these, literally, like, I went to strategy as, like, like you see, like, the late night infomercials, blenders, the blender infomercials. Just chopping into, like, just turbo-powered blenders that just incinerate, or just totally obliterate whatever you put in there. That's what it's like, these yeshiva students. The ones that are, obviously, there's people that varies intelligence and degrees of dedication. But I knew people that, like, you present any idea, the idea, and before you know it, these razor sharp, intelligent analysis just, organizes it into different sections, and boom, like it's, just like that. Like that high-powered blender. These are some of the most talented, intellectual titans on the planet. I would argue, the Torah creates these intellectual soups. So my idea is like this. I want to take, during these 10 weeks, all the major problems of physics, of engineering, of sciences, of biology, everything, and just present it over 3 weeks, like a 3-week course to these guys. And just have, like, presenters. Like, these are our biggest problems. It's like, and this is humanity's sharpest intelligences. This is it. They're in yeshivas. And I think as a way for them, so my idea would cover the funding, would get grants for it. That's my idea. Like, because that's what it does. Torah sharpens your mind. Yes, go ahead.
How much common sense do yeshiva students have? And I mean that literally because
9 years as a yeshiva.
Yes, but you find people that are very intelligent. They have zero street smarts. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I think what you're saying is that you can be extremely intelligent, but if you don't take in the human emotion and human actions with that.
Yeah, so that's why, as we all know, the yeshiva schedules are comprised not just of like Talmudic Torah study, but also of Musar. So what the yeshiva goal is to create not only these mental giants, but also these people of incredible character.
Has nothing to do.
Yes. Is you saying? Do they know? Like, are they worldly? Some yes, some no. Varying.
Put a coat on already.
I'm sorry.
Come in out of the rain.
So you have these isolated episodes of, like, of strained. Yeah, we have a lot of those in yeshivas. Well, some of them, I knew one guy who was like a bona fide genius, but like a genius is genius. There's always like 5 or 10 of them walking around, So yes, you have some of those, and thank God they're not spending their time playing video games like the rest of the other potential geniuses that our world is graced with.
I would say that, like what you're saying, like you look at some geniuses in like the fields of physics, like Sheldon on
That's
the TV show.
That's exactly who I was thinking about.
But it's different because here they're doing Masar, they're doing self-reflection, looking at their character traits. Guy, they're not doing that in the other fields.
Yeah. So
one can make.
I agree that there are, of course, like in any field where there's going to be, yes, that's going to happen.
But everybody can't be all well-rounded, no matter what field you're in.
No, but he's talking about taking these geniuses and putting.
I'm not only saying taking geniuses. I'm taking taking brains
Right,
and
and you're trying
and
to
squeezing
then take
out
them
any.
of that environment and putting them in a real world problem solving.
But remember,
And I'm
problem
wondering-
solving. That's the thing. Their intelligence is so sharp that as long as they understand what the subject matter is, I believe, this is my theory. I said this is my way to save
You
the
learn
world.
this in 10 weeks. If you put somebody into, no matter how smart they are, you put them into a new subject they know nothing about.
Points of reference.
And
You know what happens
give
in
them
Talmud?
10 weeks.
You know what happens in Talmuds? You know what happens in Talmud study? The Talmud is all one subject. Every day they do that. They take on a new subject.
Yes, but
So
And
that's
subjects as broad and as exhaustive as whatever else that they need to encounter. This is what they do. That's what they do every day. They encounter new subject matter and they learn about new ideas, and they have to get a footing in the intricacies of very, very broad ideas.
I think your idea is a cool idea.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to hear. Let's move on. So,
and then I'm going to get more. But I say you can be very sharp and really in one area, being the study of Torah.
but that's the
And
thing.
not so good.
But remember,
Put
Bernie,
you in another environment, and it's a totally different type of study.
How do you put it into practice? If you put things that you're learning into practice.
Yeah.
But what I said was exactly the opposite. It's not just about becoming intelligent in Torah. It's about Torah forming who someone is.
Yeah.
And the Chinuch writes that the way someone is going to prevail is only if their intelligence overrides their instinct. How do you make sure that your intelligence is healthy, is active, is robust? Feed it, right? Hone it, right? Sharpen it.
Yeah, remember a few months ago you referenced the statistics, which was correct. That 20% of laureates of Jewish heritage,
22, yeah.
whereas it's 0.001 or something percentage of the world. So does it argue that there is some sort of an artificial selection by intelligence?
I have a friend
Going
here.
on for millennia?
I have a friend.
A little bit of hubris, right?
Yeah, but I have a friend here in town who I always debate. He's a big, whatever. He's a Jew. He's a very sweet soul, and also very intelligent. But he's not so into he doesn't believe that Torah is necessarily divine. Not that he's had any exposure to it, but which is probably why he doesn't believe it. But either way, he wants to argue the reason why Jews are so gifted is because throughout the generations, the greatest minds, the greatest intelligence were the rabbis, and the rabbis always propagated very profusely. Thank you. While the greatest minds of the Christian world were the priests, and they didn't have any kids. So it's like a self-selecting, like a natural selection, where the clever idea.
Well, if you take the Holocaust and you look at the people at the end of the war, with those who were standing with the little sticks, their legs were sticks and all, they were the fittest.
Well, they were the fittest, or they were the ones who just weren't sent down the other line. Many of
the workers, remember the better one that could work.
Yeah, but remember that they're fit in what way? They're not fit necessarily in modern day.
Maybe they were shrewd or somehow.
Maybe the Almighty said these are the ones that are going to rebuild the Jewish people, and we don't even know why. I know I have some of my own ancestry. My great grandfather, for example, was a genius of incredible world class genius. World class.
Lithuania was from?
Yeah, he's from Slobodka. I have his book, which thankfully was smuggled out. We have some sort of. He was one of the heads of the major institutions, a genius of world class genius, and he was unfortunately burned alive in a hospital in 1944. But that doesn't mean but the Jewish people we've had geniuses dime a dozen. That's one argument as to why that is, but. Either way, that's the idea. The idea being that the Torah is going to empower our soul or intellect, however you want to call it the same. So I want to take this a little deeper level. It's a very cool insight based on something that we've discussed before here. So we know that the child in utero studies the whole Torah. We mentioned this many times. When the child's born, they forget the whole Torah. Right? Or it says an angel comes and touches on a lip, and he forgets the whole Torah. As it says in Scripture, sin crouches at the entrance. So I always had this mental image of some angel slapping the kid on the face, and the child forgets it. And obviously the question we have, wait a minute, what's the point of teaching the child Torah if the child's going to forget it anyhow? So the first question you have to ask when you examine this Talmudical text in Nida 30b. But what I discovered was that there is a different Talmudic text that also talks about what happens to the child at the moment of birth. And it says the child at the moment of birth gets something called the Yetzer Ra, called the evil inclination. Evil inclination at the moment of birth. And it proves this with a source in Scripture, and the very same source that is used to tell us that the child forgets the whole Torah tells us the child gets the Yetzer Ra, gets the evil inclination. And we know one of the rules of Torah exegesis, which is a fancy way of deriving laws from sources, is that you can only use one source for one law, or one insight, one idea. How is it possible the Talmud in Sanhedrin 91b and the Talmud in Nida 30b take the same verse, Lefeta chatas rovetz, sin crouches at the entrance, it's the verse in the beginning of Genesis, to say both the child forgets the whole Torah and that the child gets the Yetzer Ra, the evil inclination, at birth? How's it possible? Two separate things.
I don't understand why they use the word sin.
That's a good question. Let's hold off on that question. Oh, sin, because the child doesn't have Torah, so he's more likely a sin. The child has the evil inclination, which by definition, by design, is designed to try to compel him to sin. That's the easy answer to your question.
Yeah.
No, not original sin. What about the Adam?
I said I'm surprised they used the word sin.
Why is that? Because you associate the word sin with the Christians?
Yes.
We predated them, remember?
I get it, but what's another? Are you saying that the literal word?
Lefeta chatas rova. Well, the word literally, if you want to get on an etymological level,
I do, because
the word chatas or the word chet, which means sin, also means when someone shoots an arrow or misses the mark.
Right. They really.
Right, to miss the mark.
That than sin.
So
because sin is very
whatever strikes your fancy.
No, it's not about striking fancy. It's about being a more literal.
Well, we look.
accurate-
Well, literally, it could mean sin, or it could mean missing the mark.
Missing the mark is not the same as sin.
That's right, but literally, it could mean both. Just like the word, many words in the English language have multiple meanings. But in biblical Hebrew, when two words have when one word has multiple meanings, it's because those meanings are linked, not just that it's randomly that the word, peer and peer, and peer and peer, pair of eyes looking out from the peer with their peer, and eating your peer, right?
Hebrew has root words. The root.
Right. So yes. Well, when the roots of the words and the multiple meanings are linked. And the idea being, because when we talk about a sin, it's also missing the mark. It's misdirected energy. Okay, so that's the question. How do we use one verse for multiple derivations? The answer is because it's really one thing that happens. A child in utero is an unhindered soul. And what's a soul? A soul is an element of pure spirituality. That's what it is. Thus, a soul has imprinted, embedded, ensconced upon it Torah. Thus, a child in utero knows the whole Torah because a child in utero is a soul that doesn't have the influence of the body. We talk about man being body and soul. Man being half animal, half angel, right? What's the angel like? That's the soul. And what's that? That's Torah. That's Torah. That's spiritual. And then you have the influence of the body. What's that? That's the Yetzer Ra. So what happens? A child in utero knows the whole Torah because it's just a soul. As the child is being born, they get the influence of the body in the form of the Yetzer Ra. And thus, as a direct result, forgets the whole Torah. Not because the Torah is disappeared, rather the Torah is now buried under the mountain, under the influence of the Yetzer Ra. Thus, really only one thing happens when the child emerges to the world. Therefore, all you need is one verse. Brilliant. Genius,
So it
right?
opens up the second.
Right, so it's only one thing. One thing happens, but that has multiple results, multiple consequences. The child gets the influence of the. Now they're a human. They weren't just now. Before them, they were a soul. Soul knows all Torah. Now they're a human because they have the influence of the body and the soul, the body on top of the soul, and therefore that leaves the consciousness, because we know as a human you have the influence of the instinct, the influence of the intelligence, the body and the soul. And what's more powerful? What's more? I'll get to in a second. What's more at the forefront of someone's mind? Their body. Thus, what happened? Where's the soul? The soul's still there. The Torah is still there. We still have a soul deep within ourselves. But it's hard for us to relate to it because our first reaction is our instinctual and animalistic reaction. Yes, what you were saying.
I was just saying, well, when a child is born into the world, it's going to have to almost have that instinct, that humanness. So maybe that's why it was given it right before it was born, because this is a planet you have to take and react. You know, if someone's going to poke you, you have to blink. Those are the things you have to live.
Yeah, of course it's by design. Right? Absolutely.
So I think that's interesting how it was given as it was born.
Yeah, well, the Talmud does give us a reason why the child doesn't have that influence beforehand. We'll hold off on that. Okay. Now, just to add some flavor to this idea, Abraham, we talked about this once, I think we did. Maybe we talked about it elsewhere. Abraham knew the whole Torah, Talmud says. And the Midrash asks, Mehechan lamad Avram Avinu Torah. Where did Avram Avinu study Torah? The Torah wasn't given until much later. Moses was his great-great-great-grandchild. Where did Abraham know Torah from? So we have two midrashes in different parts of the midrashic literature. One says Me'atzma from himself, and one said that his two kidneys became like two springs. Either way, it's from within himself. Within himself, what he just examined his intestines and he found Torah. No, there's something within each and every human that has Torah. That's the soul. And even before the Torah was delivered from the spiritual realms to the physical realms, right? Or to within, before Moses gave us the Torah was still part of every soul. Abraham had a soul. A soul is purely spiritual. A soul, the DNA, the software that's printed upon the soul is Torah. So Abraham was able to engage his soul to such a degree that he was able to derive Torah from it, even before Torah was even given.
What about these priests that were supposed to be in the area there when Abraham and all those great prophets were? Did they get any education from those priests who were supposed to sanction their position?
Which priests?
What priests? That's what I'm saying. Melchizedek and all them people.
Oh, so so those were people that still had somewhat of a tradition. So Adam perpetuated a tradition. We talked about this once, the difference between Abraham and what his innovation was. Abraham was working on his own. So Melchizedek and even Noah, they were vestiges of Adam's tradition and teachings of God. Abraham was unique because he was working all alone by himself in a sea of paganism, and he arrived to these conclusions on his own. But he studied Torah within himself because he was able to tap into the power of soul. So now, let's bring this full circle here. When someone studies Torah, they are talking the native tongue of their soul. So you study Torah from without, right? As our bodies, like we talk Torah without, and deep within ourselves, buried under this mountain of the Yetzirah, our soul hears this faint, it's like someone calling out to you in your native tongue, whoa, it's like soul gets awakened, so to speak. Because that's what the soul is. The soul is Torah. The soul is not Torah, but the Torah is the language of the soul. So as we talk about Torah reinforcing, strengthening, awakening our soul, it has a much deeper level because that is what the Torah is all about. That's the fabric of the soul. I look at it as maybe a way of an illustration. If we look just on a bigger picture, like the relation to the body and the soul. So you have imagine like the soul is held captive in a prison with 10-foot, steel reinforced walls separating the body from the soul, or the active consciousness from the soul. That's what it's like. Your job is to create a bond between the body and the soul, to reunite them, to align them. That's what it is. And we said you have the body and the soul, and you want to have the influence of the soul impact the body. We look at Torah as and all mitzvahs really as creating small little puncture holes within this massive, massive division, this massive barrier that's separating the soul and the body. And Torah, more than anything else, creates a very, very strong link between our consciousness and our soul. So that's kind of, I was look at number 4. So we're talking about why we study Torah. And we said we have 15 reasons. Now we're done through 1 through 4. Number 1, because it's a mitzvah. Number 2, because we have its instructions for life. Number 3, to receive reward. Number 4, to sharpen and hone our mind and empower our soul. Let's move on to number 5. Shall we?
We shall.
So, to fend off, this is a little bit of a continuation of, well, it's slightly overlap, but you'll see it's a different idea. To fend off our Yetzer Ra, to fend off our evil inclination. As we mentioned, the evil inclination is a power, not its own power. It's not independent power. We don't believe in that, but it's by design, because the Almighty wants us to have this struggle. The Almighty created counter forces to what we ought to do to make it worthwhile. Otherwise, it's no resistance. There's no resistance, no pain, no gain. So, how do we engage the Yetzer Ra, the evil inclination? What do we do? So there's a few different methods that we could do. Number 1, we try to avoid it. If you guys remember, we talked about this once at great length. We said that Jacob told Reuven, you're not a king and you're not a priest. Why? Because you're compungious. Impuntious? Which word am I trying to say? Compuntious? Impetuous.
Unstable as water.
Compunction. No, compuntious is a word. Don't look at me like that, guys. Compuntious. It's got to be a word. If it's not, I coined it. I hereby coined it today. So that's the idea. When someone lives their life in a way where they avoid encounters with their evil inclination, it's one degree or one kind of method of engagement. We have another method of trying to align the interests.
It is a word. Compunctious is a word.
Thank you.
Causing or feeling compunction. Regretful.
So,
And you also said stalling was another technique.
Stalling was another technique. I write that down here. Stalling. Thank you for remembering that.
Is that like
Procrastination.
Yeah, wait 5 minutes,
Giving you a little bit of time so that you can think of your choice.
So, we have another one. The Mishnah says in Pirkei Avot, Chapters of the Fathers, Yafet Torah im derech eretz she'yesh ne'mishtachas avon. It's good. It's really beautiful. It's nice to have Torah together with hard work, because toiling in both of them will make you forget sin. This is the idea of forgetting. Where it's not in your mind. You're too busy with other things. But I found 2 areas where Torah enables someone to have very high levels of engagement with their evil inclination. And as an important note here, we call the evil inclination evil when the Midrash calls it very good. Because while it is evil, it's trying to compel us to sin, but it is the only way for us to achieve anything in life. There's no way for us to become any greater people. The whole great experiment of humanity is where there is optionality. There's opportunity for greatness and there's opportunity for wickedness. That wonderful experiment is only made possible by this force we call the evil inclination. So it's a very good thing, because if we're going to become better people, we'll need the efforts of the evil inclination. So I found the Talmud. I mentioned it when we talked about evil inclination at great length. The Talmud says like this: Father gave his kid a big blow, and then he gave him a bandage on top of the blow, and he said, every time you have You wear the bandage on top of your blow. You don't have, on top of your wound. You don't have to worry. Eat what you want. Drink when you want. Take showers when you want. Take cold baths when you want. No problem. But you take it off, it's gonna consume you. That's the example. It's the illustration, and that's a parable for the idea of God told the Jewish people, "I gave you a wound, evil inclination, but I gave you an antidote. I gave you the Torah. The Torah is the antidote. Torah Tavlin. Barasi, it's hard. Barasi Torah Tavlin. If you tell any yeshiva student, you say, finish the sentence. Barasi Yetzer Hara. They ought to say Barasi Torah. If they don't say it, then you call the question their yeshiva tenure. But if I created a Yetzer, right? I created the Torah as a Tavlin. The word Tavlin, back to the point that we talked about with Janet, is Hebrew for antidote, but it's also Hebrew for spice. And this is two levels of how the Torah provides us either an antidote or a spice for the Yetzer Hara. Antidote because when someone is fully engaged in Torah study, then it eliminates the power of it. They're able to overcome and override their evil inclination. That's number one. Number two is the spice because it is a way to channel energy that could be used for sin and channel that towards Torah. How so? So the Zohar, there's the only Zohar that I know because my grandfather quoted it. The Zohar says that if not for the Yetzer Hara, Yitzra De'araya, if not for the evil inclination that tries to compel us to sexual promiscuity, there would be no delight in Torah learning. Now, you look at sexual promiscuity on one hand and Torah learning and very divergent things. That's what you would think about. But there's a certain energy that a man has, a man more often than women, as we all know. I don't want to get into that argument, guys. But there's a certain energy that men, unfortunately or fortunately, have that compels them to be to seek out illicit immorality. That's a reality. That the Zohar tells us that this same energy, if it on the kosher side, if it's channeled correctly, that gives the delight in Torah study. That gives the power, the energy into the passion of Torah study.
And that's why the rabbis had all those children.
No, that was not what I was getting at.
They channeled it the proper way.
Give me five. That's it. Right? What, you think we're not paying attention?
You always are, yeah. So the Talmud continues, by the way, in that place in Kiddushin 30, also 30b. It says like this: which translates, if this is talking about the Yetzer Hara, if this loathsome one attacks you, drag him to the house of study. So, like, if you have like the someone comes to mud you, terrible, evil. What do you do? What do you do?
Bring out the scroll.
Well, what do you do? What do you guys think? What do you do? If someone comes,
If he's got a gun in your face, you give him the money.
you give him the money, but you have a menace. The menace, this reprehensible menace. What do you do? No, you run away. That's what you do if you can.
Yes.
The Talmud says if this menace that we call the evil inclination attacks you, drag him to the house of study. Drag him to the house of study. What should you do? The Talmud is essentially saying the way to avoid or the way to overcome this menace is by studying Torah.
So essentially you're saying is whenever you have a fear, you are better served.
No. Well, no, that's not what I said. All I said was that the Talmud says that if this loathsome menace, the Yetzer Hara, attacks you, drag him to the house of study. And the problem, I think, is that what it should have said is if this loathsome menace attacks you, flee from it, run away from it, and run to the safety of the house of study. That's not what it says. It says drag him, mashchei. We used to drag him, kicking and screaming to the house of study. What do you mean? You should abandon him.
Well, or if it's attached itself to you and you think about it, like it's been at work, it's on you, this desire to do something.
Yeah.
Well, you just carry it with you. It doesn't matter if you can't get rid of it. Carry it with you all the way.
But why drag it? Little words, drag him.
What I am understanding is
Yes.
you drag yourself,
No, drag him. Shrehu, drag him.
The inclination, right?
It's with it. Well, it's
Not going to want to go.
which is you to study Torah, so you cannot think of that anymore.
That's not what it says. I would love to agree with you. So my insight is like this. My insight is like this. This is what I wrote over here on the way here.
Exactly.
That on just the deposit slip. It says like this. It says, drag this influence. I think perhaps what it's telling you like this. It's saying that don't try, once this power is upon you, don't try to shake it off. Rather, channel it. You want this power. This is a potent power that's going to help you if you channel it in the proper way. Like we said, the same passion that can be used for seeking out immorality, if it's channeled correctly, it brings delight in Torah study. So, but I think it's two levels. This is why I wanted to add a 5 and 5A and 5B. There's one where it's an antidote. Two where it's a spice. A spice helpens. Right? A spice improves. You know, the Torah is like a spice for the evil inclination because you're taking the same thing, but you're giving it a little different flavor. It's the same energy, same passion, but it's used for something good. It's spice it for the positive. We have a few other points about this with regards to how to be an antidote, totally above it. We find the Rambam at the end of the laws of Isurei Bia, which means forbidden sexual encounters. The very, all the way at the end, he says, Ein machshavas harai el b'lev hapanim chachma. There is no thought of immorality, only in a heart devoid of wisdom. What he's saying is this is the same idea that Talmud says that if a heart is totally consumed with wisdom, no thought of the Yetzer Hara is going to penetrate. That's number one. Number two, we have the three cardinal sins, which is murder, idolatry, and adultery. They are exact opposites of the three things that the Mishnah tells us in the chapters of the Fathers that uphold the world: Torah, avoda, service of God, and gemilas chasadim, and loving kindness. Why? Kindness means to give. A murderer takes everything. Right? Obviously, worshiping God is the exact opposite of worshiping an idol. And Torah is the opposite of illicit sexual activity. How so? Because the locale of the root of sexual immorality is in the same element where the Torah is going to be filled. So if the heart is full of one, it can't be full of the other. You know, they're opposites. Now, let's skip that and skip that.
The heart has a feminine side to it.
How so?
Well, sexual immorality, obviously being female in origin, I don't know, the way you're languaging it would be that the heart is where the feminine part of us would reside.
Lave, interestingly, the Hebrew word for heart is masculine. Yeah. But neshama, the soul, is feminine.
But it's clear that Yetzer Hara is definitely feminine.
He's the expert at this.
Yes, but the evil inclinations that he's talking about and all those other things, dragging him, it's always male. I'm just listening to what you say.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Okay.
I find it interesting.
Thank you. Me too. To recap, I think that the Torah is going to help us in combating our Yetzer Hara in our evil inclination in three different models, three different modalities. Number one, it's going to help us forget it. If you're busy with Torah, with other things, you'll be busy. But someone who's busy, the boredom is always a segue to sin.
My mother used to say that the idle hands are the devil's handiwork.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
I agree. But to what you're saying, that is to be staying occupied and to be
Right. So you occupy with Torah, occupy with other things as well.
Positive.
So that's one thing. Number two, on a higher level, is you channel it. You don't You don't forget it. You have it there. You drag it to the house of study, and the highest level will be where it's totally eliminated. It's not a factor because your heart is totally consumed with Torah. That would be number, I guess, 5, 6, and 7, or 5A and B, 5A, B, and C. Number 6. Try to go through this quickly. Oh my gosh, it's 11:19. You know what? Let's skip to number 9. It's more fun, I think. Yeah, if we have more time at the end. To save the world. We study Torah to save the world. If there were not people studying Torah, the world will self-combust. Talmud is very clear in several places that, number 1, it says that God created the world conditionally. It's conditional upon the Jews studying Torah. If the Jews were not studying Torah, if the Jews abandoned Torah, the entire world would just revert back. It would just be before the Big Bang. No matter, no nothing, no time, no space, no energy. All that would just evaporate. Number 1. Number 2, it says, that's in one place, that's in Shabbos. In the book of Nedarim, it says that if not for the Torah, the God wouldn't create the world. Well, it says it in a different kind of language. The idea being, if there was a second where there was no Torah study anywhere in the world, the entire world would just incinerate itself in a moment's notice. Now you'll say, and the Talmud elsewhere says, also very interesting, that people who claim or who derisively exclaim that, what do the rabbis do for us? What do the Torah scholars do for us? How do they benefit society? Torah says that the Talmud there in Sanhedrin says that they have no portion of the world to come. Why? Because the people that are saying that don't realize that they're only existing because of the Torah of the Torah study. And the great Volozhin yeshiva, the mother of all yeshivas, of all modern yeshivas, they had a policy that 24/7 there was always someone. They split the days up. 24/7 there was always someone in the Beis Medrash studying. Always.
Like the Ner Tamid.
Ner Tamid, exactly. Because, and this is the idea being that the entire world is only granted, this on a deeper level, the entire world is only granted just lays on a deeper level here. On a deeper level, we say that when we describe God, we talk about God as being the creator whenever it happened, thousands of years ago, millions of years ago, billions of years ago, whatever. At the point of origin of the world, God created the world. Number 1, created the world and everything within it. Number 2, God is a sustainer. So, according to Jewish theology, if God were to cease continually giving the world energy and life and just spiritual sustenance, nourishment, the world would cease to exist. It's not like it created and then it goes on its own. There's no autopilot. The merit of the Torah study guarantees that this plug is not pulled from the world. So we here today, studying Torah, in a small way, we are contributing to the world continually existing. You know that there was this great rabbi who used to have a policy that there was one time during the year where almost no one was studying, and that put the world in a precarious situation. And what's that? Like the 2 hours after Yom Kippur. What happens after Yom Kippur? Everyone's famished. Everyone goes and engorges himself with food. That's what happens, right? So, even everyone is fasting. All those Torah scholars are all fasting. So therefore, there's this time period where, there's somewhat of a weaker or a less dedicated Torah studying population. So that's why he made an effort. Every year he wouldn't break his fast. He wouldn't go to the breakfast meal until he studied for 2 hours. 2 more hours he would add to his fast because he would just study Torah because he knows that that's the time where the world is this is very volatile.
Here's a question.
Yes.
When we're dealing with studying Torah, do we, as the number of people studying, do we include the Gentiles who are studying Bible, the first 5 books as well, are studying Torah.
Yes, so the Talmud says in the book of Avodah Zarah 3a, the book of, I think it's Horius 10, also a, and the book of Sanhedrin 59a as well, following statement, quote, Torah, afilu, even a Gentile who is studying Torah, behold, he is like a high priest. You know that the apex of spirituality or the holiness is the high priest. High priest on Yom Kippur. That's the apex. And even a Gentile, someone who's not supposed to be studying Torah, it's the Jews. Torah is called the Jewish birthright in the Torah itself. So it's meant for Jews. It's not meant for non-Jews. Even a Gentile studies Torah, it uplifts him spiritually to be on par with the high priest. So that's remarkable. Now that being said, Thomas says, "Wait a minute, but the Gentile's not supposed to be studying Torah." This means he's studying Torah in whatever mitzvahs are pertinent to him. So the Gentile has the seven Noahide laws, and those are laws that are fundamental to how they should live life and how all of you men should live their lives. And in those areas, when they study Torah, it's Torah study. It's not just it's Torah study with all the qualities and all the greatness attributed to that. So I want to tell you guys a personal story. In the year 2006, there was the Lebanon War. Second Lebanon War, it's called, in Israel. That's where they were sending the Hezbollah was sending Katyusha rockets to the whole northern Israel. Thousands and thousands and thousands of rockets. And it was in the summer of 2006. So I just told you guys the schedule for a yeshiva student or yeshiva's schedules is that they're off in the summer for 3 weeks, but the war was going on. So the yeshiva says, we're not closing our doors. And the Rosh Yeshiva, since 15 he got up and gave a speech. So listen, we're at the vanguard here of saving the world. We're the ones who are ensuring peace in the world. The Torah scholars increase peace in the world. How can we, when the brave soldiers and our military is at war now, how can we abandon our posts? So he said, we're not taking off. And they didn't take off, So there were thousands and thousands of students in the yeshiva, biggest yeshiva in the world, Mir Yeshiva, where I was studying. And he said, we're not taking off. We're continuing going. It doesn't matter, you have summer plans, you go into your camp, or you planning on going to the north or the south, or you want to go sites. It doesn't matter. We're not taking off because that's our mission. He viewed this as not just being something we do for a finite amount of time. We're contributing towards saving the world and ensuring peace. And not only that, he said, I want everyone to make an effort to write Torah insights. The highest level of Torah scholarship is not just Torah study, but getting to an issue so deep that you come up with a novel idea, a brand new idea that was never said till then. Torah is so malleable. It's God's wisdom. It's infinite. There's so much room for growth and scholarship and wisdom and insights that the Chidushei Torah, which is called Torah novel ideas in Torah, are ubiquitous, or there's room for it wherever. So he says, I want everyone in the yeshiva to write up a Torah essay on some new novel Torah idea. So hundreds and hundreds of people. I remember when I was delivering mine, he had stacks like this in his office of the contributions of all the like stacks and stacks and stacks in his of what the yeshiva students contributed towards what we call towards the war effort. Which, by the way, as an aside, when we were talking about last time, a few times ago, about why or what's the rationale, what's the arguments to and for taking the yeshiva students out of yeshiva, making them go to the army. One of the arguments is this: that according to the Torah, and this is not just an idea that was invented recently. This is the Talmud. It's established already for hundreds and hundreds of years in the Jewish philosophy that Torah study does more than anything else to contribute towards the safety of our people in a degree no less than the soldiers doing the physical battle. That's the idea. Obviously, it's a controversial idea, but this is where it comes from. So that would be number 9. I want to quickly run through 6, 7, 8. I don't want to miss any. I'll do them faster. Can we go till 12? We have to go to 12 here. Let's go to 12. So we'll go to 12 and okay. So number 6 is a little bit different than number 5, A, B, or C. To achieve unbiased intellect. So we talked about honing the mind, making it sharp. But there's also a problem that our mind is biased. And that is, if you want a certain end to be true, like you've ever been in an argument. Maybe this only happened to me. But if sometimes you're in an argument with someone, or a debate or disagreement, and then halfway through the argument you realize that the other person is actually right, and you're wrong, you still feel an urge to continue arguing. Why is that? That's because your brain tells you this is what you want, so I'll continue to concoct argument. It's like what a lawyer does when you know your client's guilty. Or because you convince yourself that this is right, So that's
what I was thinking. Sounds like a husband and wife. Sorry.
Now, if our intelligence is our most potent, most vital, most crucial tool in life, we want to make sure that it's not biased, it's not convinced. I mean, we're going to make very important decisions about our lives, about our beliefs, about our families. They're very important decisions. How do we know that we're not going to screw up? Like just as an example, you mentioned marriage, right? So marriage is a decision. It's a very important decision, right? Unfortunately, most people in the world, or at least in America, that make those decisions, make terrible mistakes. And the consequences of a bad decision as to who you're going to marry are devastating. Financially, emotionally, for the kids, it's devastating. Yet we see the vast majority of people that make this decision make a bad decision. Why? It's something which is probably the most important decision you'll make in your life is who you'll marry, right? Arguably, right? We could agree about that. Yet so many people don't make the correct decision. Well, why not? Why would someone not take the most time they possibly can to make this decision? If it's the most important decision you'll ever make in your life, well, you might want to take more time. How is it possible that the most important decision in everyone's life, or most people's life, is going to be one that they're going to screw up royally on? Why?
They make it with emotion.
Or maybe they make it with intelligence, but it's perverted intelligence. It's biased. It's not clear. It's not clear, rational, reasonable intelligence because maybe they don't have that access to it. The Torah, that's one example, but there's lots of examples. I think maybe either the second or I think this is probably the first most important decision someone has to make is whether or not God exists, really or not. Not like, yeah, I believe, whatever, not think about it too much. Most people don't actually think about this issue too much. But the consequences of whether or not does God exist or God not exist, is it true or is it not? Is it a bunch of baloney, is it a bunch of folklore, is it a bunch of nonsense, or is it a reality? Most of us try to take this in between. Yeah, of course we believe in God, we go to synagogue, but we don't take it that seriously. That it impacts our lives and our decisions, and it's always looming above us. Most people don't do that. Why don't most people do that? I don't know why most people don't do that. Probably because that's very painful to actually make these kind of important decisions. Either way, but if someone were to go about doing that, they have entrenched interests that are going to influence their decision. You want to make that important decision, you have to make sure you have clear, unbiased intelligence. How do you gain clear, unbiased intelligence? The Torah is a fantastic way because it's a straight intelligence, and and like we said, in the Torah arena, it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what you are, it doesn't matter if you're a bastard, like the Talmud says. The Talmud says a bastard who's a Talmud Chacham, someone who's a bastard is a pariah in the Jewish world, but he's a Torah scholar. He supersedes the high priest who is not a Torah scholar. In the Torah world, what matters is what's right, what's reasonable, what's intellectual. If a young child makes an argument that's true, the great rabbi has to lay down his argument as well. So, we call this in Jewish literature, in Jewish philosophy, it's called Das Torah. Where Das means knowledge or intelligence of Torah. where the studying Torah, the more someone studies Torah, the closer they're going to align the way they think, the way their mind thinks, the way the Torah thinks. I.e., to make your brain as close to God's brain as possible, as close to unadulterated intelligence, not biased, and not being swayed by any one of your whims. Number 7, to achieve love of God. When you look at the Torah, in the broader sense, what you ought to see is a book of instructions, primarily a book of restrictions. You talk about kids say, not interested, so many restrictions, who wants to? And it's legitimate. The Torah is very restrictive on what kind of pleasures we can and cannot have in the world, what we could eat, who we could sleep with, where we could live, many, many, many restrictions. And, I think, just if you were to just glance at the Torah, you say, wait, who needs all these restrictions? Who wants them? How does it benefit my life? But in truth, all the pleasures that are banned to us by Torah law are what we call simplistic pleasures. We talked about the different levels of pleasures, higher levels, lower levels. They're all simplistic pleasures. What the Torah does open up for us is the most advanced and most sophisticated and deepest forms of pleasures are open to us.
I wouldn't say there were restrictions. I would say there are guidelines.
True. Well, however, I think it's semantic. These are prohibitions, restrictions, or guidelines. How do we live?
Well, no, prohibition is not a guideline. Prohibition means you shouldn't do it.
Already.
Oh, okay.
I said
It
prohibitions.
depends on how you see it. If you look at something
100%.
as a restriction, then you're going to feel resistance to the restriction. If you look at it as a guideline, then the resistance inside of us is lessened.
No, but it depends on how it's stated, whether whether it recommends that you do a certain thing or whether it demands.
Right.
There's
Put
a
your own
difference.
interpretation to it. It's a recommend, it's a guideline.
If it's recommended, it's a guideline.
Take the best thing that's good for you.
The 10
You're a
suggestions.
restriction, you're a sinner, okay, that's too bad.
So we find a mitzvah, and that is the mitzvah of loving God, which is a crucial mitzvah. We know it's part of the Shema. The first verse after the Shema, you should love the Almighty God with all your hearts, with all your soul, and with all your resources. We're commanded to love God. And we know this is a problem because having an emotional reaction or reality towards God, even an intellectual relationship, is difficult. How are we going to have an emotional relationship? That's a major problem. Now, with this mitzvah of loving God, just as a cute, important tidbit, there are 6 mitzvahs that are called the 6 constant mitzvahs that are not related to time. They're always there upon us. Number 1, to believe in God. Number 2, to believe in the power, to believe in one God, to love God, fear God, and not follow any of our other, not follow the desires of our hearts and our eyes. These are 6 end mitzvahs. These are goal mitzvahs. These are what mitzvahs are supposed to bring us to the end. So this could be an entire series, by the way, on these 6 mitzvahs, 6-part series. But either way, one of them is to love God. How do you go about loving God? Ask Maimonides, what do you do? Yachshav yizbon, you think and you dwell upon either mamar of mitzvahs, pulos of God's mitzvahs, God's Torah, or God's creations. Until you have an achievement, until you have an insight, until you hit pay dirt, and you have pleasure in that pay dirt, which is the highest level of pleasure. The Ram tells us that the mitzvah of loving God is appreciating the enormity of God. That's what it means. To such an intellectual degree where it affects your emotions. That's what he says. How do you do that? 4-step process. Number 1, you think. Number 2, you dwell upon. Yesbona. There isn't really a good word for in English. It means to think deeply, to dwell upon the issue intellectually for a long and protracted amount of time, but also on a heightened state. That's what the word means. It's just kind of hard to synthesize that into one word. Yitbonen. So 2 things: think and have this deep form of thought until you have an insight in one of 3 things, either in a Torah, or in a mitzvah, or in God's handiwork, which we would call maybe science. Until you have an insight. Something clicks, you've been working on it for 6 months, and you finally have an idea. and that will trigger a pleasure that's the greatest pleasure around. That's the mitzvah of loving God.
Could it also be like awesomeness when you have an awe?
It's a discovery. Yes. But a discovery that's born out of a process, not just like a discovery that's just beamed to your virtual reality goggles.
Right. It's an intent study upon something.
Right. Yes. Now, this experience, says the Rambam, and it is. It seems like there are people from the people that have experienced it, they sign off on it. Is the greatest pleasure possible. So while the Torah does tell us to withhold from certain pleasures, whether it's a prohibition or restriction or a guideline, however you want to say it, it's to withhold from certain pleasures, the Torah is opening up the door for us to have these other pleasures. Now, how does this work? Because the Torah, we said, is the mind of God, God's brain, so to speak. And God's brain is quite vast. In fact, it's so vast, it's infinite, because God, like God, it's an infinite idea. The deeper you go, the deeper you realize. The more study you have, the more you realize how little you know. Most, a kid who spends 6 months preparing to read their bar mitzvah. To them, that's it. I've done it all. And then the advanced scholar like Rabbi Akiva says, "What do you mean? Compared to what Torah really is, I'm nothing but a shepherd of small animals." Rabbi Akiva considers himself a shepherd, the person who knew the most, who Moses says that Rabbi Akiva is someone who should be delivering the Torah instead of Moses. Rabbi Akiva says, my knowledge of Torah is equal to a shepherd of small animals. But the high school kid or the seventh grader who says, I studied and I memorized how to read words that I don't even know what they mean. What do you mean? I've done it all. I finished it. I've done it. Can move on. That's the reality. The more you study in Torah, the more you realize how little you know. So the people that know the most or that think they know the most are the ones that literally know the least. That's what the Torah is. You're opening up your brain into just an unfathomable intelligence. And as you dip your toe in, you say, oh, okay. You start thinking about it. You find some insight where it's a contradiction, it's a problem. You think about it, and then you dwell upon it. You spend 6 months thinking, 18 hours a day about a certain problem in Torah. And then you hit pay dirt. And then the rush, the endorphins that are released are unparalleled and unrivaled by any sort of substance, chemically or naturally produced. That's what the Torah tells us. And that's a mitzvah that we have, each one of us. We say it every day. Love God. It's a mitzvah. It's not an easy thing to achieve, and probably not some people actually achieve it. But it's one of the mitzvahs, one of the 613 mitzvahs, and it's one of the 6 constant mitzvahs. And it's one we say every day. How are we going to do that? So God says, you know what? I have my Torah that I gave you. I have my world that I gave you. And if you spent 18 hours in a lab as a scientist, and you're facing with a real problem, or you have a discovery of the double helix structure of the DNA, or you have some sort of eye-opening insight in science, you have that aha moment where you realize how vast God is, and how mind-blowing that is. That's another way to do it. God says, hey, I'm opening up my handiwork to you. I'm opening up my brain to you. My mitzvahs as well, my instructions. These are tools that you use to achieve this mitzvah of Hashem. The Torah is perhaps, arguably, one of the 3 ways to do it. Maybe it's the best way. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's via science. Maybe the scientist as well has the same opportunity. But this is the Torah is the way, or one of the ways that we could do to achieve this wonderful mitzvah and wonderful pleasure of loving God. Number 8, Vital, you had your hand raised there.
No.
I have a simple question. When you were studying at the yeshiva,
yes,
for the 9 years, whatever,
yeah,
you only study Torah, Talmud, and all that, or do you study other subjects as well?
Like what?
Sciences or math?
History, math,
no. Just Torah. So whatever history I did was like Torah history. Or like history of Torah, Jewish history, but that's all incidental. What we did, our schedule is imagine a room like a vast auditorium, enormous auditorium, with 1,000 yeshiva students sitting on benches 6 across, with literally a foot and a half separating 2 benches, with stenders. Stenders are like these little lecterns. These, just a little stender. There's no other word for it. It's a Yiddish word. It means like stander, like a thing that stands, which is just ergonomically designed, perfect for Torah study. You can stand with it, or you can sit down and lean on it, right? And then just 3 sets of chavrusas, of study pairs, and just literally streaming on top of the lawns in debate for 4 hours in the morning, 4 hours in the afternoon, 2 hours at night. That's what it is, basically. You walk into some of these places, like if we took a class trip to yeshiva, like it's an experience, or it's an environment that's not paralleled by anywhere else. Nowhere else. You go to Harvard Law School or wherever. What we consider it to be the epitome of intellectual achievement. It's kindergarten compared to walking into the Mir Yeshiva. Kindergarten. You just see like these like I said, we talked about earlier, these intellectual superstars debating and arguing for hours upon hours on top of their lawns.
I was just
Packed, not a single seat's empty. You know why? Because if you come, because there's more. It's like some game of musical chairs. They put 110 people for every 100 seats. Yeah. So like they had a rule that if you weren't, the study starts at 9 to 1, and then 3 to 7, and then at 8 to 10 at night. So there's lunch and dinner in between. And people came from all of Israel came to every day to converge on the yeshiva. So, but if you were not there by 9:30, if you were outside, you were still finishing your breakfast, you were drinking a coffee, whatever, you weren't there, someone else would take your seat fair and square. Because that's what they have. They have a finite amount. They have, probably 6,000 seats and, 6,500 students. So every single seat's taken, and the noise. I remember we were in. I was studying. They have like multiple buildings in the yeshiva that I went to. Maybe 6 or 7 or 8 buildings of the buildings. There's no expansive library, none of that. It's just like every little place they put in.
What do you say, from a tikkun or?
No, it's from Talmud. But there's all the commentaries. Just the books are endless. Every base matter, every study house has all of the access to all the books that you might need.
So where do you?
And then you have one room in the entire yeshiva that has all the exotic books.
So besides high school or Hebrew high school, whatever, beforehand, where do you get the other art and social stuff and science?
Where do I get it?
You were on the other yeshiva students.
Yeah.
So some yeshiva students they go to universities, but that's not part of the yeshiva schedule. Some yeshivas in America have like partnerships with local colleges. They go twice a week, whatever. But many of them don't. I never went to learn about art. Whatever I did, I picked it up on the internet. Math. Well, I'm saying we went to high school, but yeah, the Torah itself there's a lot of mathematical calculations that need to be made.
But I mean, if you're going to be a rabbi, you should have some, and you're dealing with people,
Yeah, so yes.
You should have some.
But remember, this is the point that I started off with. When we talk about Torah study, it is a pursuit of learning that is not to achieve an end goal. It's not about getting your certification or getting your ordination or becoming a rabbi or having a curriculum. It's not that. It's about studying Torah for the sake of studying Torah. That's what it's like. So if someone were to decide, when I wanted to get my smicha, I wanted to become a rabbi, I did a program, I did like a program for rabbinate, or but when I was in yeshiva, I was studying nothing to do with anything that was related to any of the rabbinic field or anything that I would use to my ordination.
You said you go to yeshiva after the high school.
Yeah, well, I went to yeshiva high school as well.
But it's 9 years beyond.
Well, it doesn't have to be 9 years. Like I said, it's not a set amount of time. Some people go for 1 year, some people go for 6 months, some people go for 50 years. That's what I said. It's not about us.
Go for 9.
Well,
people took a little longer than others.
No, but it's not about it. But the more you study, the more you realize how much there is to study. So no one actually, even the greatest sages, finish it all. No one reaches the level of Rabbi Akiva today.
So this one graduate from yeshiva?
There's no. That's exactly the point that I wanted to make. Is that it's not about. There are some yeshivas that have programs and curriculums, but the classic yeshiva is not about graduation or achieving a certain end. It's about studying for the sake of studying.
It's about learning.
How does one
About
become
learning.
a rabbi?
So then how do you?
So then I did I took a rabbinic test under the Chief Justice of the Jerusalem Supreme Rabbinical Court, and I may or may not have aced it. And I got my smicha, and I got a smicha from also one of the institutions that I was learning in Nation Torah. I got 2 smichas. Smichas is the Hebrew word for ordination. But some people decide that they don't need that. They want to study Torah, and the ones they don't care about, they're not going into any field that would demand or require them to have smicha, to have a rabbinic certificate or
How do you
whatever.
support yourself when you're going through yeshiva?
So that's the thing. So someone asked the question why I.
You're a waiter.
You don't have time.
So like
Can you
this,
give that schedule?
in the communities that value Torah study above all else, there are So when I was a yeshiva student, my parents supported me till I got married, and then once I got married, I did some work on the side, and my chaya was working a little
What
bit,
work when?
a little bit of this, a little bit of that on the side, I tutored someone. I had some tutoring jobs. I went to a different yeshiva that gave a stipend. Plus, my wife had a job, and my in-laws helped a little bit.
Got life of a graduate student.
So we scraped along for 5 years of after I got married, and that's kind of why one of the reasons why I left wasn't because I finished all of Torah. You can't finish all of Torah. It's not possible. You're not infinite. Right? We said that. Even Rabbi Akiva says, what am I? The more you learn, the more you realize how little you know. One of the reasons why we left was because, it was financially challenging. So, you know what? I'll tell you. I feel like I don't believe that it's possible for me to ever recapture those pleasures that we've had studying Torah. Nothing, and I feel like what the Rambam says, like this apex of pleasure that you have while Torah study, when you're working on a problem, and when you're writing Torah insights, when you're totally delving into a Torah problem, you're immersed in it. There's nothing like it. There's no. You give me $1 billion, the pleasure won't be. You can't do it, because it's a spiritual pleasure. That's just it's not matched by any amount of physical pleasures.
So after you finish the yeshiva, what more is there to learn or to study in order to become a rabbi?
So becoming a rabbi is a very subjective term, because depending on who's ordaining someone as a rabbi, will determine what they're looking for by way of for their graduates or for their rabbis, So all the institutions of rabbis in America, they have, I guess, what they demand of them or what they expect of them, or some curriculum, So obviously, the more traditional the rabbi, the more it's going to be dealing with traditional learning, as opposed to other kind of progressive ideas, whatever. But some of them, like some of the most intense rabbinic tests, are going to be like the Israeli rabbinate, just the state-sponsored rabbinate, gives some of the most grueling rabbinic tests.
Like New York State Bar.
Yeah. It's
Do they test things like Torah studies, or do they do things like how to counsel people?
Yeah,
so some of them have elements of that, and some of them are no. This is like a Torah position, not like a pulpit rabbi, but like more of like a rabbinic judge or whatever. So so it's going to be different wherever you go.
Knowing Torah and understanding.
No, I'm saying, but there's going to be those that are more geared towards pulpit rabbis, and there are other ones that are geared towards, let's say, be a rabbinic justice, where it's just about adjudicating.
Yeah, well, that's what rabbi used to mean, is adjudicator of the law, not teacher. Now it's morphed into a rabbi as a teacher.
Yeah, it has changed a lot.
Study
Yeah.
any law?
Rabbis used to be community leaders.
That's right. Well, in some communities they still are.
Did you have to study any kind of law?
Which law? Well, that's all we did. That's what we did all. And a lot of guys, to answer your question. So a lot of yeshiva students, when they finish their yeshiva, they go into law. because to them, like they've been doing this day and night for years. So like this is yeah, exactly. Their brain is very conditioned to understanding how the rigidity of law and how it works and how to think and how to argue.
I mean, especially the pulpit. We always consider, at least, would be a pulpit rabbi, and the importance is so much has to do with dealing with the public, your constituents, and you're saying that a lot of the rabbis come out are just not equipped to do that.
No, or that those are the people that do not go into. Or a lot of them don't go through yeshiva to get any sort of document. They just go to yeshiva to study Torah. It's not about becoming a rabbi. It's about just studying Torah.
So do you feel sometimes that getting a little bit more of a general university type curriculum would help?
This is at the core of the debate of, if you want to Google the term, modern orthodoxy, that term. That was a philosophy that is espoused by modern Orthodox, where it's important to get a general secular education on top of a Torah education. That is what that argument argues. As an ideal, means not just as a way to solve a specific problem, but ideally, someone should get as broad of a secular knowledge as possible.
Isn't like this is major people of Western society with the madrasas. They do nothing but teach Quran and then send them off to fight for Taliban.
And that's brainwash.
Yeah.
How do they do that? By teaching them only
but
So not that these two things are mutually exclusive, but I'm just wondering, do you think society would be, obviously I take your point that the folks that do yeshiva are brilliant.
Not necessarily, but it encourages.
Incredible work ethic.
Yes.
Do you think society would be better served if some of those folks would use their intellectual talents to go into, instead of studying Torah for 10 plus years, to become physicists, or medical researchers, or engineers, or those sorts of things?
So this is what happens when you come late, Dave. I'm not trying to blame you, but I did make that argument. It's okay.
I forgot about
The clock is rolling.
I'm not trying to condemn you in any way. I'm just saying that what I did argue in an earlier point, I said that one of my dreams is to take these yeshiva students during the 10 weeks of their vacation and just present them all the problems, and to just rapidly, like the blender. Remember the blender example?
But you still have.
But I do agree. But I think that one of the problems is, and it's a great frustration, is that if you have a guy who's taking his Torah studies seriously, and they spent 10 years or whatever studying Torah, that they're a fully formed intellectual just titan. They're ready to go. But now they have maybe, they have 2-3 kids. They're married. They have financial responsibilities. They don't have the 8 years to go get a education. They may not even have a bachelor's degree. They have nothing. They get a bachelor's degree plus a graduate degree plus this plus that. It's just not practical for them. That's a source of major frustration. Where in today's kind of reality, where you need to have certain, benchmarks of secular education in order to get into those fields. I think if that was removed somehow magically, I think that would be a very good thing, because you could open up, it'll help them because they're about to, maximize their abilities and help the world, because the world will be able to benefit from these people tackling these problems. But unfortunately, that's the reason why most of these people don't go into those kind of fields. But I would love if there would be some way to sidestep all that. I think it would be a wonderful boon for everyone.
There's a great statement by Supreme Court Justice Scalia, who made a speech once, and he said, "All of these great, fantastic, brilliant lawyers, that's the last thing society needs. If they had gone into medicine or engineering, physics or something else like that, I wish they would have used their intellectual talents to go into fields that actually are more productive or help more people or help the world." And that's sort of the analogy. Not that there's not a place for people to study
Torah.
No, but I'm saying after they finish the Torah study hones their mind. They're good to go.
You can still study. You may have 12 hours a day, but you could study
for sure,
an hour or two a day.
For sure. But his question was, let's inject all this brain power into physics.
Oh yeah, well, no, of course. But we have a whole huge world. Everybody has to fill their own dish.
It's not you can study some more. It's not about a piece of paper on the wall. You just cannot be a medical doctor, even with your a genius type. And you
Right.
don't have to be
So
a
much
genius
Torah.
to be a
You just
doctor.
cannot. You need to know something. You need 10 years. To do it.
Right.
You cannot be a cosmologist to solve the Big Bang thing without long
logical
time.
mind. That's all.
So yes, but I think it is frustrating that some of the most gifted people on the planet will not be afforded the opportunities, and the planet won't benefit from those people doing or fulfilling roles that would maximize their talents. So ready at 12, and I think we got only through 9. I have 6 more. So let me just read them. Let me read them quickly here. Another reason why I study Torah is to create worlds. What that means, we'll have to be a spoiler for next time. To be close to the Almighty, to preserve the relationship we have with the Almighty, to live. What does that mean? Of course, that would be something that I would have explained if I had more time. It to be our food and nourishment and sustenance for Olam Haba, and lastly to achieve dominion over nature, as in Rabbi Yochanan, who when he would study Torah, the birds would be self-combust, and how to be able to resuscitate the dead and split the sea. All that can be done through Torah. But we don't have any time. We'll stop here. We have, I think the number went up from 15 to 17, not including the additions of the crowdsourced ones. But we found 17 reasons why we study Torah, and I believe that there's more. But either way, I think this should reinforce the idea that Torah study has been the obsession of the Jewish people for so long, not for no reason. Because really every aspect of helping us achieve what we need in life and making our lives more enriched and empowering ourselves and becoming great people in every different element, every aspect of how we can potentially become greater people, improve ourselves, can be achieved via Torah study. So that's that, guys. Yes.
My father says that when he studies Torah is the way that God's talking to him, and then whenever he prays, he's talking to God. So that's what he studies Torah.
I have
Fantastic.
a topic for you.
So you'll email me, or you can tell me right now. But
angels.
let's do it, baby.
Huh? Is that worth?
If it's something with this angels, like I said, if that's what you guys want to hear, we'll talk about. We'll talk about angels. Of course, I have no prior experience.
No, I don't either.
I'm not talking about from personal experience, but
the
yes.
origin of angels, how they came to be, why we believe.
Don't have a daughter?
Yeah.
Oh.
No, but I thought that was a good
Yes.
general topic.
Yes. Thank you.